Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sustainable Culture. It's a nice, rainy springtime day here today. I hope you had a nice Mother's Day. Hope the pollen hasn't got you too down. I know today with the rain, it's provided some much-needed relief to folks like me who suffer this time of year. If you've been listening, you already know this, but if it's your first time, this is a podcast about exploring the relationship between human society, our psyche, and the natural world. Last time, we delved into the world of tattooing with Sarah Philp when she told us about her shop, Little Bear Tattoo Co., and the unique strategy she applies to her business. Check it out. They're cool folks over there. Really, really like the work that they do. This episode, however, was one I've been wanting to get to for months now. Over in Seattle, in a well-seasoned bar, somewhere in a single situated chair with a particularly choice view, sits our guest today, Mr. Jeff Barlow, waiting. He's got a sketchpad, stuff to draw with, and an impressive ability to trust his own process in the moment, the envy of any creative. The band, who's about to provide live music for the night, is about to have their picture taken, and not in the way they're probably used to. Draw it in one, Jeff's professional tagline, refers to how he approaches his sketches. He draws the band in, well, one song. The result is raw and often emotional moments of what he sees in front of him in that amount of time. I think his work is a fantastic example of how trusting the process can be a riveting, scary, and beautiful experience. I, an overthinker, find a lot of lessons in that. I will let the details from our meeting, his work, and how it pertains to overthinking and trusting the process come from the interview itself. So I suppose we should start. This is episode 34. I think, therefore I draw. All right, Jeff. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's been admittedly a couple of months for me since our last episode, so I'm very eager to get back into this one. I'm stoked to talk to you because I've been meaning to talk to you for quite a while. So thank you, Jeff, once again for being here.
You betcha. I'm glad to be here. It's an honor.
Well, thank you, Jeff. So you go by Draw It In One. That's your
Yep.
What do you call that? Your handle?
That's my handle, my label, my Instagram tag.
Yeah, tag, handle. Gosh, we got all these fancy. What a fancy world we live in. Yeah. Draw It In One is, and we will. I will let you go to the furthest extent of this that you like, because I love what you do. But Draw It In One for the listeners here is, in brief, is a very quick pencil sketch art. Is that sound accurate?
Well, I tell you how I describe it.
Yeah, take it away.
About once a week, I go to live musical performances, and I draw the band in the length of one song. So when they start, I start. When they're done, I'm done, and whatever I get is what I get. And I use a number of different mediums, sometimes pencil, sometimes pen, sometimes paint, and draw the band in one song.
It's so cool too. Like I've actually, as someone who's gotten to see you do it, it just seems crazy to me. I'll be honest, in such a funny way, because I guess just the idea of doing something artistic so quickly is, like, for example, we talk. I guess this is like technically like one of my second point. But I'm going to skip ahead for a second because just the way you describe it is just so cool. First off, the actual sketches, which I will share in the show notes, some links to Jeff's website and everything. Please go check these out for the listener and get a visual representation of these. They just are cool. They, you can tell that they're drawn quickly, but not in a way that is, I guess, derogatory to the finished product itself. It looks so captivating to me because you really capture some fantastic perspectives. Like, for example, you'll get the lights that are behind him setting the mood.
I love doing that.
Oh my gosh, you capture the right elements to make that moment stick, and I guess that is what you're doing. You're capturing moments. The fact that you're doing it so quickly. So I guess to say something about that, I think people will go to gigs all the time, and nowadays everyone has a high quality camera in their pocket. So literally thousands of photos could happen at every gig. You take a picture, you capture that moment, right? It's frozen. It's an instant captured, in your phone. But if you want to capture the whole song, you see people recording video with their phones, right? And they'll get the whole song. Maybe they post that up online. But in order to soak in that video, you got to sit and watch it for 4 minutes. What I do starts at the beginning of the song, finishes at the end of the song. And so I like to think I'm capturing the whole song in a way that you can look at it in a single instance. Instant. In an instance.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that sounds fancier. We'll go with that. But yeah, I think that is so cool, I guess, in that way, because you're kind of being forced, I guess the quickness of it, you are sort of being forced to capture this instant. I guess what is so scary to me about what you do from an artist perspective is that there's just such an emphasis in art on trusting the process. And I guess to do what you do and to actually enjoy doing it, you would have to trust the process. And so I wonder if you'd mind sharing your experience getting used to that idea. Do you always trust yourself? Do you now?
Who knows? Every show I go to at the beginning, when I've got my sketchbooks and I've got my pens and I've got this funky special jelly paper that I'll talk about in a minute that I draw on. And at the beginning of the gig, I always have that question in my mind. It's like, well, I have nothing now. What am I going to have at the end of this night? I might have nothing still, right? Yeah. Or I might have something. And there's always a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of trepidation, if you will, about I don't know what I'm going to get. But the way this all started was, have you heard of the phrase or the term urban sketchers?
Urban sketchers? Yeah, I have heard of urban sketchers.
Okay. Urban sketching is kind of a big thing that's really spreading around the world now. And basically it's like people go to places they like and they'll sit down with a sketchbook and just take it in a sketch over a half hour, over an hour, over a couple of hours. Yeah. And it's, people do it all over the world. And there are different groups that do it all over the place. And Seattle is a big place where it started. So I started to learn to urban sketch from a guy named Gabby Campanerio, who he used to be the Seattle PI's sketch artist. And he had a call and he'd go someplace in Seattle, he'd draw it, write a story about it, and it was in the newspaper every week. He gave a workshop, taught a bunch of us how to do that. I got excited about it and we used to do it quite a bit. And I had a friend invite me to a band gig, to his performance. Yeah. I thought, hey, I'll bring my sketchbook and I'll draw it. And I sat down to draw them, and the drawings were terrible because I don't know, you've been to a lot of band gigs. They won't hold still. It's not like drawing a cathedral or a museum or a bar or something, because they're moving the whole time. And I kind of got frustrated. I was like, not getting anywhere. And I kind of, in a moment of exasperation, I'm having this inner conversation. It's like, well, if you're fast and loose, I'm going to be fast and loose. I'm going to see if I can draw them in their next song, one song. And so they started playing, and I started, and they finished, hit the last note, and I picked up my pencil and I looked at it and I was like, there's something to that. I like it. I like the energy of it. So I tried it again, and I was like, this is a pretty good thing. And I kind of kept that in the back of my mind for couple months, maybe even a couple of years. And then I think I had another friend playing at another gig and decided to go to that and brought my book. And I've been doing it about once a week since then.
Wow.
Yep. And usually there's 3 or 4 bands at a gig I go to. And so I'll get 3 to 5 drawings of each band. So I come out every week with between 15 and 25 sketches. And it's almost, the process itself is really super enjoyable. It's like running sprints. It's like, I don't know, making something cool happen, Yeah. And the fact that there's a piece of art that proves that I did it is just kind of an added bonus.
No kidding. Like the reward system there just seems the dopamine response,
Something like that.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's the healthy kind of dopamine, though.
Who knows? I just love live music. I love the people who go to live music type of shows.
Yeah.
The kind of people I've made, and it's a wonderful experience. And then the fact that I get to the end and show it to the band and go, here you go. And they're like, that's us. And I'm like, yeah, that is you.
And if there's anything a band likes, it's a little attention. And that man, just the joint. And I say that half jokingly because I'm a musician as well. And I 100% understand that.
Absolutely.
Someone's like, hey, look, It's you. And you're like, oh my gosh. It's cool too. And I will just say, I absolutely will reflect your love for that environment. The sort of gig environment, the band environment, whether it's in a bar or wherever, is just cool. The people that go to those things are interesting, and there's always something different happening every single time, and it's never ending. It's really infectious. I absolutely relate with that.
And something I've learned about the Seattle music scene is that I go to a gig and I see the musicians up there on stage, and then next week I go to another gig and I see different musicians on stage, and then I look out in the audience, and the audience is made up partially of the people who were on the stage last week.
Oh,
right? It's like all the musicians of Seattle get together and trade money with each other every Friday
You're
night.
right. That's hilarious. I love the way you put that. They just kind of toss money back and forth. That is how the local gig life for a musician absolutely feels. That's such a funny way to put that.
They're all friends. They hey, our bass player is sick or broke his foot. Can you come join us? And it's another bass player from another band to come up and join them. They trade places, and it's a beautiful symbiotic musical ecosystem.
It sure is. Wow. It's just so cool that you notice that. I guess you would as often as you are there. It's so cool. I have several, I guess I'm getting a kick out of you noticing that, because I guess for a lot of my, just so you know, and the listeners don't know this either, I guess, the story about me is that when I was in high school and shortly thereafter, all I ever did was play music with this band that I was in, and we played locally a lot. And that was my life, what you just said. It was hysterical. And to this day, some of my longest relationships, some of my strongest friendships are folks that we traded bands, we played in different bands, we saw their band, we would go to their shows, they would go. So it's just funny that you're noticing that. And matter of fact, that's how I met you. Fun fact is that a longtime friend of mine who I played in a band with, that same band I just mentioned, called me and said, hey, I'm going to be in Seattle. I know it's not really close to you. I live in Post Falls over here in Coeur d'Alene area.
I have been there.
Yeah. Quite a ways from you, though.
And I had to stay overnight.
Oh, nice. There's worse places to stay the night for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he had called me up and said, I know it's not close to you, but he lives in Alabama, for context.
Oh, okay.
And so he said, I know it's like close, but it's the closest I've been in a long time. It's probably been over 10 years since we've seen each other. We should hang. I'm going to this Che Amy Dorval show.
Yep.
And that's where we went, and that's who I went to go meet, and that's where I happened to meet you. Fun. That's
right, at the Central
parallel.
Saloon. I remember that.
That's right, Central Saloon. That's what it was called. I couldn't remember the name of it.
I love that place.
That's a cool venue, Central Saloon of Seattle. Gosh, you really, if walls could talk, that place has been there a long time. It has seen a lot of bands. It strikes me.
Yeah. I think they've got a sign up there that said they're established in 1893 or something like that.
1893, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I remember noticing that, and yeah, it was just a cool night, of course. What a funny parallel, though, to your story and to how we ended up actually getting connected. That's interesting. So, gosh, this trust exercise that you've gone into, I'm curious to go back to that.
Sure.
Getting used to this, I mean, obviously you didn't always do this. I'm wondering how this learning how to trust yourself and really just digging it in the process, how it has helped your art and sort of like we're always gaining an identity of ourselves as people who create stuff, how it's kind of helped with that. So I'm wondering if you think it might be better to approach this question with a little history of how you got into doing this in the first place. I guess you kind of got into that, but I'm wondering what did you do before that, and what kind of got you there again?
By trade, I'm a graphic designer, which doesn't have a lot of drawing to it, but I've always drawn things. I every time I sit and do an urban sketch, which I still do a little bit of that, I remember when I was 5, 6, maybe 7 years old, 5 or 6 probably. I'd go visit my grandmother, and she would get me these dot-to-dot books. And as I was drawing a dot-to-dot, she would always compliment me. "Oh, Jeffrey, you sure do a good job drawing a straight line. Look at those clean, straight lines." And I sort of took pride in that. I put the dot-to-dot together, do my nice straight lines. Anytime I'm drawing a straight line on a piece of paper, I hear her voice in my head encouraging me. And I think that probably really helped me pursue my arts. I remember in 5th grade having a teacher say, myself and another friend, we both drew a lot. She said, "You and Danny really have a good art perception." I was like, "Really? I do? Okay, cool." And then when I actually got into photography during college. I'm always into different kinds of arts. I drew a lot of band logos. I mean, if I had every Peachy folder from back then, AC/DC logo, Van Halen logo, Scorpions logo, Ozzy Osbourne logo.
Yeah.
All those.
The Van Halen logo, of course.
Yep, of course.
Yep.
And, but then I got into college and started learning graphic arts and didn't do much drawing. I remember an art teacher in college saying, "All right, this is a drawing class. We want you to start off at the beginning of the semester with a sketchbook and see how much of it you can get filled by the end of the semester." And I was like, there is no way I could possibly fill an entire sketchbook. Not in one semester. That's so much drawing. Well, to fast forward to today, I just finished sketchbook 62 of just band drawings. I've got 2 full shelves full of them.
Oh my gosh. I was curious about how many you've got. That's remarkable.
But because of my design background, I was involved in I don't know if you've ever heard of a thing called AIGA. It's Professional Design Association, and designers literally all over America. There are chapters all over the place. And went to a design conference where we had Gabby, the urban sketcher, come and do a workshop and taught us how to urban sketch. And since then, I've just been sketching like crazy. I think one of the things that has helped form the artist that I am now, I don't know if you notice this or you know other people who draw, but when you have a young, inexperienced artist, you'll notice they'll pull out a pencil and they don't push very hard, and they'll just do light, little short lines, and sort of start to fill in the page.
Yep.
And you try to take a picture of it and make a copy of it, it almost doesn't even show up.
Yeah.
They haven't got their confidence yet. And by sitting down and going, all right, there are 8 people in this band, horn section, singer, bass player, drum kit, and they're about to play a song that's 4 minutes long. You don't have time to be tentative about it. You just have to go for it and be okay if it sucks. I have drawings that I don't like, right? Then I'll move on. I'll just scratch them out. But as a person, I've always had a reasonable amount of confidence. I've, always got good feedback, et cetera, from others. But as an artist, it wasn't until I started doing this that I was really like, yeah, I can draw that. I'll give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, it's okay.
You're fine with it.
One of the things that Gabby said that when he gave us this art workshop that has really stuck with me is he says, now before we all go out and find something and draw, I want you all to remember, none of you has a show going in the Louvre tomorrow. This isn't going to be hung up. It doesn't matter. So don't worry about it. Don't worry if it's not good enough, because honestly, no one's going to see it anyway.
Yeah.
The reason you do this is because if you sit down at a place and you observe it and record it into the book, no matter what the art looks like, when you open that book up again and look at it, it will take you back to the spot where you were. And all of the emotions, all of the sounds, the sights, the smells, the experiences, all sort of come back to you through that drawing. And it's true. I can crack open my sketchbooks and look at these different bands and like, oh, yep, I remember where I was for that. I remember where I was for that. Have to be honest, I'm about 4,200 drawings now.
Wow.
And I can't recall every detail of every single one anymore.
That would be insane if you could.
Yeah.
You'd have to have a brain of a robot, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it was kind of fun finding ones that I had completely forgotten about. I'll crack open those. Oh, yeah, I remember those guys.
Oh, yeah. Rediscovering.
Yeah.
It's just so cool to me that you can kind of create these memories. I mean, it's like taking a snapshot, but it seems like the connection, though, to that moment is stronger for you because you've had to spend such intention in said moment. I guess that is so interesting to me. I just find that fascinating in terms of, because as a person who creates art in different mediums or tries to, I just find that so fascinating because I'm such a classic overthinker. I speak for the overthinkers in the audience, absolutely. And it is such a hindrance on the creative process so often when you let it become that. And I think what I find so fascinating, I guess, and just really, what's the word? I guess I find a certain freeing energy in what you're doing. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It's funny because I hadn't really thought about it until you just said it. You know, you said, oh, I'm an overthinker. I was like, yeah, I have been an overthinker and still am at times. But if you're drawing the band in one song, overthinking is not one of the options.
No.
You got 3 minutes. Go to punk rock. You got 1 minute and 90 seconds. I went and saw a band called, what were they called?
If they're
the
generous.
Scoffs. I went and saw a band called the Scoffs up in Everett. And I wanted to get a taste of what they were like before the show because I hadn't heard their music before. So I looked them up online. I found them on Bandcamp or something like that. And I looked at their last 2 albums. They did not have any songs that lasted a full 2 minutes. So I was like, oh, I'm going to die tonight.
That's hard mode. Yeah. Gosh, your poor hands.
Yeah, but that was that was a therapy session for sure.
Gosh, I imagine. Oh my gosh. I mean, what a cool exercise though. I mean, I'm recalling, it's interesting, I guess, how pressure, you're kind of applying this pressure, how that can be such a remedy to, a panacea to the overthinker's world. I just think that's very cool. And it makes me wonder, gosh, I wonder if there's other cool activities I could force myself to do quickly. What environment would but it seems there's an environment that you kind of have to be in. It's like doing that on your own at home would be much different than something outside of your control has begun. Do it or don't. It's do or die, man. Well, I think that's cool.
I think the field I'm in graphic design, there's a little bit of that in that you don't get to just have free reign to just do whatever you want because you're not doing your art for yourself. You're doing it for a company or a person or whatever, and they have certain limitations. And sometimes they have really, really tight limitations. And I've found that having really, really tight limitations can sometimes be this, can spur on great creativity or great, breakthroughs, because
Yeah.
you don't have the option of having every option in the world. You just have to do it on very limited. Let me give you a good example. I've got a good friend named Mark who was super inspiring to me. Actually, he decided he was going to do 100 album cover designs in 100 days.
Whoa.
And the rule was, you pick the album, you can only use black and white and only typography, no pictures, no illustrations.
Okay.
And he had to design the cover in the length it took to listen to the album.
Oh, okay.
So he pops in the Ramones album and does a Ramones album cover in however long that album takes. And then he posted them online and blogged it back when blogging was a thing.
Yeah.
And he showed this to me, and I was just super inspired by the ridiculously tight limitations. And that stuck with me, and I've actually applied that in a couple of different things that I do. It's like, all right, can I do it all with just one pencil? Can I do it all just in one book? Can I do it, in one song? But the limitations are also liberating in a certain way, because, you don't have to pick from everything.
Yeah. Gosh, how counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Because you would think that an overthinker would want options, because it's like suggesting that maybe we like to overthink.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really...
But sometimes you can't help it.
You can't help it. It's just how you run. And it's just... it's like, I heard it said one time, I forget where it was, probably on social media someplace, but I remember seeing that someone had described overthinking as a disease. And I couldn't help but, in sort of a dark, humorously, I just think that's funny. I do think, gosh, just shut up to myself often. Just like, just do the thing, because you'll love it. I think that this is just a really cool real life example of what I did hear someone say about overthinking. They said, overthinkers have a hard time seeing the path to the goal sometimes. Mm. We know the goal, but we get real lost in the process of getting there. Speaking back to the process that we were talking about. And so he said, for the overthinkers, if all you can see is the next step, because you can at least see that much. If that's all you can see, just do that. And then figure the next one out. And eventually you will get there. And that, of course, is the process. But gosh, talking about what you do is just very fun, because that it's just that, but in rapid time. And it seems like that's kind of in a way a secret. Maybe that's why people jump into ice cold water and do all that,
Probably.
Maybe so. Let me, I want to ask you one more question before we take a quick break.
Sure.
So, and this kind of relates a little bit to where we were. Some folks set out to accomplish like a certain goal or with their art or to just do it for fun or whatever personal reasons that may have. So I'm wondering, what about you? Why do you do it? To what end? Is there a reason, if any?
Well, I gave you this phrase earlier, but the more I think about it, the more it boils down to that it makes the world go away. Mm-hmm. I can go and sit at a 4-hour gig, and those 4 hours go so quickly. It's like, I can't believe I got here at 7. It's midnight now. I've got a book full of drawings, and it went by like in the snap of fingers. And that there's something that feels good about that, because your mortgage goes away, your power bill goes away, whether your kids are or aren't into trouble goes away. The whole world just disappears, and you're just in that moment creating that thing. And I think that's something everybody should do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter it's different for different people. Some people say, it's when I'm swinging the golf club, it does that, not my mom's thing. Or, when I'm skiing down a mountain, or when I'm riding my mountain bike, or when I'm walking my dog, or I asked one lady, what is it that you do that just makes time disappear? And she said, drink. So that's not quite the answer I was looking for, but I guess everybody's got to have their thing, right?
I guess that's, if I'm artful about the way I drink.
Yeah. But now, as I have done it for a while, I've started to come up with a couple of hopeful ends, if you will, a couple of goals. One is, a lot of people ask me, have you made a book of these? And I would really like to make a book of them. And
that would be cool to see.
I've started collecting stories. The thing that has hindered me from doing it, putting a lot of energy into it, is that I deliberately go to small venues where there are bands that do not have $1 million budgets.
Yeah.
And so I've got books and books full of bands that a handful of people have heard of. I have drawn Pearl Jam. I have drawn Foo Fighters. I've drawn the Pretenders. I've drawn Duff McKagan. But that's the exception, not the rule. So if I put this book together and people look through for their band, it's like, I don't know any of these bands. But people keep telling me that doesn't matter. It's the artifact in and of itself is a cool thing. And I just have to convince myself of that.
You know what? I if I may have some input to you,
sure.
As a spectator of your art, as a fan of your art, I would just say that for everyone with art, it's different, of course. But for me personally, what I find so captivating, I guess, what captivates me to look at your art and what I find interesting is not so much who it is, rather than just how well you capture those the emotions in that moment. I think you are pretty impressively talented at doing that. I find that really interesting.
Too kind.
I like, for example, I mentioned the light, the mood lighting that was like on a certain guy. I forget which one that was. I was just looking at it just before I called you, but gosh, you do a great job at capturing those things. And because to me, I look at it, I suppose, as from perhaps a biased perspective. I play music and have a long history of my life of playing at shows and stuff in those local things where no one would ever hear the band that I was, it was just very local and stuff. And that matters so much to you until it doesn't, until you're actually playing the thing. Like then you're like, oh, this is what matters. These are the moments that matter. And knowing that there's somebody out there that captures that cares about it on that level is kind of the reason that I ever did anything. So, I think there's a lot of musicians certainly that would relate to that. But yeah, I that's what I find interesting about your art. And I don't know if that's helpful at all, but I think that if I were looking at a book of your art, that's what I would find was really cool. Like, man, this guy clearly looks at these folks, looks at the forest for the trees, like sees the forest for the trees. That seems cool to me.
Well, and something you might find interesting about, the true observing is that if you see me at a show, you'll notice I never draw the first song, because the first song every musician has their thing, right? You see, I'll throw some names out there. You see AC/DC, you're going to get the bobbing up and head and down and the shorts and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
You see Metallica, you're going to have James Hetfield with his low slung V guitar and the way he sort of stands backwards and holds his head forward to the mic.
Yeah.
Every musician has their thing, and they come back to that. So the first song, I just watch him. How does this drummer sit? How does he hit the drums? Is this a back in the shadows bass player, or is this an up front bass player? What is this guitar doing? Is he a high guitar or is he a low guitar? And try and soak all that in, because I know that even though they're moving all over the place, if you can figure out what their thing is, they'll come back to it.
Yeah, we're a pretty predictable bunch once you watch us for a couple seconds.
It's true. And you see a band multiple times, you'll notice they do their thing in the same song at the same way. They have places they go.
That's right.
And so I look for the thing and then try and capture that, because when they see that thing, whatever that is, that's where they recognize themselves. If you look at my facial drawings, they're just quick gestural. I mean, you wouldn't be able to pick them out of the lineup. But when you look how they stand and that they're holding the Telecaster, or that they're wearing the short pants with the shiny basketball shoes or whatever, they know that's them, because that's how they stand. That's where they were. That's where the light was. That's where the microphone stand is. They're like, that's me.
Yeah.
And so the first step is to observe and figure out what it is.
Yeah, and you know what? I never said this actually. You, the way we met, is that you. Well, I guess the way that we got, remained connected was you handed me your business card, and you had drawn a little picture of me. And I just couldn't even believe it. You have designed your business cards to have a space to draw somebody in, and I think that is so cool. Very brilliant marketing strategy. Well done. And so you handed me. There was a picture of my face. I guess
Does it look like you?
It looked like me well enough. Like it looked like me, very quickly done. And it had a little bit of shaggy going on because I have this long hair and stand with a slight shaggy crouch, I've been told, which is hysterical. But no, that's great. Like you captured enough to be like, oh yeah, no, that's me. Or that, yeah, no, they do stand like that. It's pretty cool. You catch that.
And part of that has to go to your credit because I'll look through the audience. I always get there right when the doors open, usually an hour before the show starts, because I've got to get a spot where I can draw where people won't get between me and the audience.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have that, I don't have time to move around and look for stuff. I have to be able to look right now. Right. A 3-minute drawing doesn't give you a lot. I don't even have time to write down the title of the song. All of my drawings are labeled with the date and the time and the venue, so you know what night it was. But I couldn't tell you what song it is because I don't have time to write it down. But my business cards, because I'm there an hour early and I have these blank business cards, usually the band's gear is out on the stage. There's a couple of guitars on stands. There's a drum kit. There's, mic stands and that kind of stuff. So I'll draw those things so that at the end of the show, and then on the other side of the business card is really big type that says, I draw the band in one song. So at the end of their set, I can walk up to them. I don't have to say any words. All I have to do is hold up the business card and point to what it says. I draw the band in one song. And then I hold up the sketchbook and they see their drawing and they're like, hey. And then when I give them the card, they look and it's got their guitar on it.
Yep.
And so they're like, yeah, I got this. This is me. That's mine. My personal thing. And I love doing that.
Yeah, they get it. It's right away. I think that's the envy of so many overthinking artists like myself is that we end up overdoing it. And then we have to, so what do you do? And then we have to, it's a paragraph long of explain, well, it's sort of a commentary on, whatever. That is so cool that you have a way of just like, this is what I do. I draw the band in one song. Boom.
Although not everybody understands that. I will talk to people for a half an hour and they'll talk about how great it is and how much fun it is and how they captured everything. And then a question I get all the time, but how long do these take you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, one song.
It's in the,
wait, what?
It's in the
one song. It's in the title. I drew it in one song.
It's what it says on the tin. It's what it says right here on the tin.
Then you see it kick in and all of a sudden they're like, oh, no way. I didn't, I think it's such an unusual thing that it doesn't register at first.
Yeah. I think we're not used to such divine simplicity, I would say. Gosh, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation thus far. We're going to take a quick break. Take a quick break here just to take a breather, stretch break, whatever we need to do. And when we come back, I've just got a few more questions about, we've talked about process. We've talked about all kinds of cool stuff. And I want to get into some of the, darker side, lower side, some of the more challenging side to art here, if you don't mind, in just a few minutes. We'll be right back, folks. Thank you so much. And we're back. Hello, Jeff, once again.
Hello.
So, thank you, listeners, as well, for joining us during this discussion. My goodness, it's just been a blast talking with you, Jeff, it's just been fun to reconnect after a long time of meaning to get back in touch with you for so long. And it's just been a blast of a conversation so far. I just thank you so much once again for your time today.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it as well.
So I wanted to kind of, switch gears, I guess, from what we were talking about earlier. We were talking about, we had gone into the process of your quick artwork and how that kind of forces you to stop thinking about it and just do it. How cool that is, I think, for overthinkers in general, especially those who like to create stuff. So, I mean, this probably relates somewhat. I once had a conversation, I guess, with a dear friend of mine about how art, I guess music was what we were talking about. And I know you certainly would appreciate this as having been to, I mean, I'm sure you notice a lot of sad music out there. My goodness. There's something about pain and strife and just tragedy and how it affects art, how it affects music, especially. But all kinds of art. I mean, gosh, you see it come out. You can feel it sometimes in paintings. You can feel it in writing. You can just, you really, depending on what it is and how much heart there was, it's just something that makes art what it is, isn't it? I mean, the dark side of it all. And so, I mean, gosh, the discussion that I was having with this friend of mine, we were saying that some would argue that just some of the best music is what we were talking about, or just art in the world in general, just wouldn't exist if not for, I guess, just the idea of suffering or tragedy. And I guess for some it might drive them, for others perhaps not. But have you ever encountered a piece a piece of art or an artist or a project that someone put together or something that seemed separated from this underlying sadness we see so commonly? I mean, could art even exist without tragedy? What's your experience with that idea been like?
I have noticed a lot of that too, and just as we're sitting here talking about it, sometimes I wonder, is it always tragedy or, sadness or whatever, or is it just an intensity of emotion? I feel like I'm not the world's hugest Nirvana fan. I love Nirvana. I love what they did. I love how they changed the world. But one of the reasons I just am blown away by somebody like Kurt Cobain is that he had a deep and tortured soul. He had a lot of difficulty in a big cloud. And when he got on the stage and picked up that guitar, he showed it all to everybody.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to open up this door and I'm going to show you right into the very, very depths of my soul. And there's something really powerful and intimate about that. It's like, he has his dark secrets, but he was willing to let me know what they are. And, when you share your difficulties with someone, I mean, I guess I can create a connection. Although I was going to use the word connects. And I'm like, I'd really rather have you shut up. So, I don't, you know what I mean? Somehow, Kurt Cobain's torture is enjoyable to listen to, and other people's is just torture.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Like, perhaps it's from, maybe it's just that genuine. That we're kind of connected. It's that's the word I'm looking for. Maybe it's the authenticity that we're spotting or that our souls know. Maybe it's an inner child thing. I mean, gosh, I've never met a kid that hasn't been able to spot inauthenticity.
They have a very sensitive BS meter.
Absolutely. Gosh, that's a humbling experience to have a kid be like, yo, I see right through your whole shtick, bud.
Yep.
Gosh,
like John Lennon and Paul McCartney. McCartney's childhood, not too bad. I mean, he played music with his dad. He was he's ridiculously talented. And then you got John Lennon. They're both in the same band, and John talked about being depressed, and they're like, how could you be depressed? You're in the most influential, most powerful band in the world. And he's like, I'm singing help. You know?
Yeah.
And you listen to it, it's like, oh, he had some difficulties. I mean, he was raised by his aunt. He was abandoned by his mother and father. He had his struggles. And
another fact about Lennon I have heard is that he would vomit before every single performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he just was horrified, but he did it.
Yep. Bono was a mess before walking out on that stage, but when those lights go on and the first note strikes out, he's in charge, you know?
No way. Wow.
10 seconds before is a mess. And good for them. You know, I've heard a lot of musicians talking about how I've really got social anxiety and I'm afraid of people. It's like, but you're standing up in front of 50 people bearing your soul.
Yeah.
And it's like somehow they can make it come out. But boy, you step them off the stage and they just, you know, they go back in. And
yeah,
it's wonderful that music gives someone an opportunity to do that. I feel like I've had a pretty reasonable, well, maybe that's why I'm not selling millions of pieces of art, because my childhood's not been sad enough for me.
You had too good a life, Jeff. Sorry, man.
But yeah, my life's been too good, so you just do okay, Art. But,
yeah, guess you got the long straw after all, huh?
But yeah, I mean, look at the Seattle music scene. There's a lot of grunge is full of drugs. I don't think drugs are a thing in and of themselves. I think they're a symptom that there's something bigger going on.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's knock on wood, I've never gone down those paths, but it happens to a lot of musicians. And I also hear a lot of older musicians who start to, who have success later in life. And there's a lot of them who have the story of, here's how I got sober, here's why I got sober, and here's how much better my life is because of that. And I'm just so grateful that musicians like that are able to work their way through it and able to resolve it so they can keep giving us the wonderful gift that they have.
Yeah.
Because many musicians, Kurt Cobain wasn't able to resolve it. And we still have what he had while he was here, but we won't get any more,
Right. I think it's interesting. Like, I hesitate to use words like with creating art, for example, like the word responsibility. It's like, oh, it's your responsibility to provide your art to the world or something. But gosh, it for people who create, it does feel like that's your purpose. Like you know it, like it's what you bring to the table here as a society. This is what you do. If you're the bard, you're the bard. If you're the jester, you're the jester. Like you know who you are. If you are someone who creates stuff, if you're the carpenter, you know what I mean? Like whatever. I speak in ultra.
Have you read, I apologize for the interruption there.
No, go ahead.
Have you read the Dave Grohl's Mom's book, From Cradle to Stage?
I have not.
It's a fantastic book, but basically the way this thing came about was Dave's mom was a school teacher and she retired. And he's like, Mom, you're not going to go to a 50s retirement community and go on cruises with old people. If you want to retire with me. And so she followed Foo Fighters on tour. And then she would, she's backstage while the show's going on. So she met mothers of a lot of other rock stars and started talking to them. Well, what was it like raising your rock star? Well, this is what it was like raising my rock star.
Oh, my gosh.
She realized that they had a lot of things in common. So she wrote this book called Cradle to Stage, and she interviews like 20 rock stars' moms and asks them what it was like. And the one thing that many of them had in common was at 11, 12, 13, they knew their kid was on that path and there was nothing they could do to stop them.
Yeah. They were like, nope, well, this train's left the station for sure. Oh
yeah.
My gosh.
And so you just got to figure out how to love it, how to support it, whatever. Dave talks about, he's like, I told my mom I'm giving up on other things and I'm going to pursue the rock thing. And her response, she just said, well, then you better be good. Because otherwise you're going to starve to death, right?
100%. I mean, what a fair thing to say. Absolutely.
But it's, she interviewed Amy Winehouse's mom, and Amy Winehouse tremendous talent under tremendous torture.
Talk about
internally,
tragedy.
you know?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And but they were on that path, whether you wanted them to be or not. And
You know,
there's nothing
that
they could do to stop it.
that is a fascinating element to the point I was going to make, where, I mean, you're talking about, like, you were saying, like, you know, thank goodness they stayed, you know, they stuck around. They went, you know, in many cases they got sober, and thank God they stuck here. You know, they stayed here. Gosh, the relationship that art and artists have had with suicide and like the tortured souls that exist within the artistic sphere is incredible. I mean, I think of some of my favorite artists, like Janis Joplin, for example, is one of those just tragic stories. I mean, gosh, one of the classic ones, Jimi Hendrix. But there's a ton. I mean, there's so many of these examples of this. And so I just think of these things. Obviously, all art is not sad. I'm not being naive enough to say that, but it just seems like such a fascinating driving force to the art that we create. And to sound like a broken record to some, if it is true that art is a mirror of society, I've heard that so often, then I think that we do have the responsibility, therefore, to kind of reflect that stuff back in all of its sloppy messiness, because life is messy. I think that's probably fair to say. So, I guess the point I was making is I hesitate to use words like responsibility, but it does seem like if you can do something and you bring an element to what makes us as a people, as a community, why would we want you to hide that? Why would you want to hide that? It feels awful to do that, you know? So it seems like that responsibility is there to some degree.
Well, and I think I heard someone once talking about, I might have a child prodigy, right? And how do I know? How do I know how hard to push them at the piano or the violin or the paintbrush or whatever it is, right? Because what if I do have a prodigy or whatever? And I think it was the psychologist that said, if you have a child prodigy, you don't have to fight them to practice. You'll have to fight them to stop.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't even know if we can put the label of it's a responsibility to get out there, because if they've got that artist soul, they're going to get it out there, right? They're going to make it, and it's going to get out there. And if it's good, people will notice it, and it will perpetuate, you know? Not always. There are tons of, I can attest to you from a show a week for the last 10 years, that there is tons of absolutely brilliant talent that would blow away anything that would ever be on American Idol, that would blow away anything that will get 1 million streams on Spotify, that will never be seen because they just didn't have the luck factor, or they didn't have the timing factor, or whatever. But they create, and it gets out there. And there's a little bit of a side tangent, but I got to tell you, in my old days of music collection, it was, you know, pick up the next AC/DC album, dig out another Beatles bootleg, whatever, find that stuff. But all the music I have bought in the last 5 to 6 years has been from bands who had enough money to make 50 records, you know? And I got to tell you, my music taste and my music experience has been enriched 100-fold, because, you know, we talked about that authenticity when they're trying to decide, when they're on the edge of, am I going to quit my job and be a musician, or am I going to have to keep, you know, fixing copiers or sweeping bank floors or whatever it is?
Right.
That music has got a soul to it that, you know, your million streamer just isn't going to have.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with the million streamer. You know, Pearl Jam, I think, is an excellent example of someone who's held on to their soul from the garage to the stadium. But boy, these young, independent, you know.
Gosh, we sure think we are.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to interrupt you either, but I think you're right with that. I think some of the most wonderful times I've ever had watching someone play music has been these tiny bands I've never heard of, and have probably never seen since. And but I still tell stories about, like, oh man, I went to Port Townsend one time and blah blah blah. which by the way, Port Townsend's great music scene out that way.
I'll have to get out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun little bars in that tiny little town, and some cool folks just play there. It's rad. I couldn't tell you the name of any one of them.
No.
But no, I love this topic, I guess, because it's just so integrated into what art is, what is the breathing source of, I guess, of what drives us as like art. You know, there's that pain, there's a lot of emotion. I guess you're right. And, you know, maybe it's more just an abundance of emotion, because there's plenty of wonderful, joyous, happy songs that are obviously coming from just this amazing place that is incredible. And those, I think the art, the songs, any art that we get the most connected to, it's probably fair to say that authenticity is what attracts us, whether it's happy, sad, demented, whatever it might be.
I'm formulating another thought about this.
Sure.
Let's see if this plays out, right? You got your tortured soul that needs to create the sound, that needs to create the music to bring relief, right? To ease the pain. And they get up on the stage, and when they're on the stage, when they got that guitar in their hands and they're rolling around and jumping off of amplifiers and screaming into that. Well, you're a musician. I don't know if do you ever sing, or do you just play?
I'm a singer and a guitar player.
Have you done a full guttural from the tips of your toes to the top of your head scream into the microphone before?
I have, yeah. Like a crazy person.
There is nothing like that. There is nothing more liberating than doing a scream like that.
I have to say, full sincerity, you're absolutely right. There's no more liberating experience in the entire universe. Yeah.
So back to the train I was on, these musicians who have all the pain, who have the torture, they get up on that stage and they get that scream. And for that minute, they're free and they're happy. And there's a joy and an excitement that they're giving to us. I bet that's a big part of it. Right? That's the moment when the tortured soul is not tortured. Right?
Isn't that interesting?
We get to see it. They share that with us, and we get to see it. We get to experience. I'm completely making up this theory on the fly as we speak.
No, I think you're onto something, honestly, because as tortured as you might be, let's say writing that song, because in my case, I wrote songs a lot when I was more active. When you're writing the song and it's sad, let's say, for example, for the sad songs, or it's full of grief or whatever, you feel it in the most full extent when you're doing it. And even sometimes when you play it, certainly, there's songs that I didn't write that I play now that make me cry when I play them, because maybe I just relate to it or something. And there's something about I think you're right. There's something about being able to show that to someone, and for people to be like, whoa, or give you some kind of a reaction in response. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but there is a goodness, there is a joy that comes from that. There is something nice, that comes from that. You're like, maybe it's the not caring. Maybe it's the away from everything. I don't know. But yeah, I do think you're onto something. Absolutely. Because it's not all negative, or we wouldn't do it all the time.
I'm trying to remember the movie I saw where somebody was talking about rock and roll versus country. And they talked about how country is about loss and about sadness. And he's like, yeah, rock and roll is also about loss and sadness, but it's also about kicking and scratching and fighting and doing whatever I can to take the loss and to get it back.
Yeah.
And I love that description.
That's fascinating. I've never heard anyone say that. That makes a lot of sense, though. As broad as those two terms are, I absolutely like that, though. Have you ever taught art to anyone?
Yes. I actually, as a graphic designer, I'm also very passionate about typography. And so for years, I taught typography at a local design school here in Seattle. And I pretty much stopped about it at pandemic, but I think I did that for almost 20 years. And I love teaching. I love giving a principle to someone, and when you see the light come on, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But sketching, I have done little workshop-y things where I take a group of kids or something and show them some tricks about drawing and stuff like that, but never on a extended form. I've never taught anybody about drawing the band in one song. I tried to set up a workshop once, and
Oh yeah.
no one signed up. So
ego boost.
I think it's intimidating. People are like, "There's no way I can possibly do that."
There's no way.
My response to that is, "Yes, you can. It's really easy. As a matter of fact, you get the pencil, and when they start, you start, and when they're done, you're done, and you've done it."
Yeah. You
now,
know
what's it going to look like?
One of my
first one will suck, and that's okay.
Be okay with sucking sometimes. Like it absolutely does happen. I think one of the main things that holds people back from creating art is that they're so scared of creating the bad ones that they think that that's going to mean that they're not very good. But that's the whole thing. That's like most of the thing, actually. I think that's one. I think that a workshop to that degree would be so fun if you could set it up in such a way where you can just maybe you could have little moments where you just laughed at yourselves for a moment and just to shake it off. I had this friend, for example, who taught yoga for a long time, and she used to say something that always stuck out to me. She'd say, "Surprise yourself," because she also would teach what's called HIIT training, high intensity interval training. She would do these classes, and it's brutal. I mean, very intense workouts. And I went to a couple of those classes, and she would say, "Surprise yourself. Like, go ahead, try it. See what you're capable of." You know, like, you're telling yourself you're not capable, but how do you know? Have you tried it? And I think that's pretty cool.
I couldn't even draw a stick figure. I was like, I bet you could.
I bet you could. Yeah.
Give it a try, you know?
Yeah. Gosh, I can't climb a mountain. I bet you could.
Yeah, I bet you could.
I bet you could.
And back to what we were talking about earlier. Maybe you couldn't get to the top of that mountain, but you could take the next step.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Gosh, this is quickly becoming just an overthinking episode.
That's just what we wanted it to not be.
I know. Classic overthinker's dilemma. I'm curious then, as we get kind of closer to the tail end of this, what do you do anyway, Jeff, that AI can't anyway?
I have actually tested the AI. I said, draw me a band in one song, and it can't do it.
Really?
Yeah, it's crap. But I
can't imagine the differences. I have to try it.
Yeah, I don't want to even get started on that debate.
Because
I have no confidence in AI whatsoever. My response to that is nobody can help you do things wrong faster than AI. It's like, why? but it can repeat it over and over again. So that there's, so it's like a bad buffet restaurant. Well, the food's mediocre, but look, we'll give you more.
Yeah. I have a friend that, and this is, for all intents and purposes, I mean, this is granted, I'm aware that AI is its own conversation completely, but I do think it's interesting. I have a friend who says that she thinks she's a very intelligent person. She is very involved in like the sustainability world and very well read and that whole thing. She talks quite a bit about how she believes that AI will soon become like a mad cow disease kind of situation where it's just inputting all this art from everywhere, and then it's giving out new art, quote unquote, new whatever it is, and then it's eventually just going to start flooding the system so much with that it's just going to be inputting its own creations, and that's what mad cow disease was that. It's an interesting theory. I think, but not to go too into that. I do just think that it's just fascinating to think that what you do in relation to like AI, it just seems that the idea of like overcoming failure and adversity and trying to not overthink against all instincts or perceived instincts, that is so, I just think distinctly human. And I think that comes out in your product, which that's pretty cool. I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have to say.
And I think one of the things about it is that, like Gabby, the guy who taught me to sketch, He said, the fact that you sat down in this place and drew a picture of it makes this place important. This place was so important that a picture wasn't enough. I had to sit down and take the effort to do it.
Yeah.
And if that effort only took me a tenth of a millisecond, it was an effort. So it's not important, so it doesn't matter, right?
Ooh.
But the fact that I got in my car at 5 o'clock to get to a place at 6 o'clock so I could be in the front row at 7 o'clock, so I could, hold my bladder for 4 hours because I can't lose my spot, because I'm thirsty, because I ran out of my, ginger beer that I bought, but I can't leave. And at the end, I've got those drawings. That matters. And when the band sees that, I get a lot of those phrases, that's the coolest thing that's ever happened to me at a gig.
Yeah.
If I had showed up there with my computer and camera and said, AI, draw this band while they play, and said, look, the AI drew you, and they'd be like, uh-huh.
Yeah, it would not be very significant at all. Be like, yeah, okay.
It would not matter. It wasn't important enough to sit and draw, but this
fascinating. Like,
important enough to draw.
If it's easy, does it matter that much? I suppose is what it brings my mind to.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we need to answer that question. This seems like a big thought, but I think that's fascinating. The fact that, I guess in contrast to what I'm saying, is that the fact that it took effort. I mean, that made it important. It was a challenge. There was a hurdle to overcome. That made it matter. At this point, of course, like you said, you've done over 4,000 or so. So it gets difficult to remember them all. I would not fault you for that ever. That's quite a bit.
Thank you.
But gosh, that is really cool though. Just that idea. I think applying that to life in general, if it matters, it's worth the challenge. It's worth doing it. It's worth creating a challenge for that matter.
And the opposite, if you put a lot of work into it, then it does matter.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It works both ways.
Well, dang, Jeff, this has been such an enormous pleasure. We maybe spent 5 or so minutes talking at the most before you had to get to work there at Central Saloon when we met. And so I had no context to where this conversation was going to go at all, and I'm sure the same for you. So I'm just thrilled with where this has gone. Where can people find you?
A couple of places. The place I put most of my work is on Instagram, because people say, "Oh, you must go to shows all the time," because I post every day. But the reason I post every day is I go to a show on Friday and I get 25 drawings, and then I just spread them out through the week.
Oh, nice.
So
there you go.
It looks like I go to shows all the time, but I go to one show a week. Sometimes if there's 2 bands I really, really, really want to see, I'll go to 2. But for the most part, it's one show a week. But so I'm drawing in the number 1 on Instagram, or if you Google the hashtag draw the band in one song, I'm the only one who does it.
Oh,
and
nice.
You'll find me on Facebook. You'll find me on Instagram. I have a website. I'm trying to decide whether I should even keep it, because
websites are funny. Yeah, websites are funny. Everyone tells you have to have one to be taken seriously, but no one goes to your website. It's so funny. It's the debacle I've always had.
But
yeah, I actually just Googled Jeff Draw It in one, and I found you. Right, you were the first one.
There's some fun stuff on my Instagram. Once in a while, I've got a little camera phone tripod thing that I bring with me, and I can put it down right next to my sketchbook so that the camera looks at my sketchbook with the stage in the background. So you can actually see, I do time lapse of drawing while the band plays, and those are kind of fun.
Oh, cool. I haven't seen those ones. I'll have to go check those out next.
Go through the reels. And but that's for the most part. Like I said, I'm working on a book, but don't stand at the bookstore holding your breath for that one, because that's going to take me a while.
Well, all the good things, if they take effort, as we were just discussing. If it takes time, hey, go for it.
My real goal is that I want bands who play in Seattle to say, I hope to draw the band in one song guy is going to be at my gig tonight.
Yeah.
And I get invitations once in a while. I pick my shows at random, right? I have a list, of the URLs of the calendar pages of about 20 venues around Seattle. And usually on Wednesday or Thursday, I start going through them and seeing who's playing. And I'll give them a play on YouTube or Spotify, not Spotify, I don't have Spotify, but YouTube or Bandcamp or whatever. I give them 15 seconds. And if they catch my attention in 15 seconds, I'll go see them. But if people want to have me show up at their show, if you can get me 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time and send me an invite, I try to prioritize those.
Let this be a lesson to all of you artists out there who are already looking up Jeff's information, wanting to find him. Make sure the first 15 seconds of your song isn't a long carried out intro of nothing. Okay, make it true. Something interesting. Hook him.
Sometimes I look in the mirror and I go, is really the reason I do all this is just because I have a short attention span and I'm not willing to work on a piece of art longer than 4 minutes?
You know what? Even if it was, I would be impressed that you found a medium that worked for specifically that. Even so,
yeah, I got lucky. I got lucky.
Well, Jeff, again, such a genuine treat to talk to you today. I can't wait to release the episode. Genuinely, folks, check him out, look him up. His art is really cool. I'm going to leave his links and stuff in the show notes. So if you don't want to go Google it and stuff, just scroll down. I'll leave it in there. So thanks again, Jeff. I appreciate it. Hopefully this is not the last time we connect. I hope one day when I'm in Seattle at a random gig, I'll maybe see you there.
Hey, I'm just really, really glad that we crossed paths in the at the Central Saloon, and that you were interesting enough to draw a picture of.
Seriously, how cool! What amazing, things that happen. What's the word? What webs we weave in life sometimes. Yep. So, let this be a lesson to everyone. Meet everyone interesting you can, because it's very fun to have these conversations.
Well, it's been an honor and a privilege. I'm truly grateful that you reached out to me. This has been fun.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Well, gosh, this being the part here where we say so long, everyone.
Well, thanks once again for listening, you guys. Check out Jeff's work on Instagram. It's at drawitin1, the number 1. All of his links will be in the show notes. I think it's cool that people like him exist. I really, really love the work that he does. Reach out once again if you'd like at sustainableculture.online if you do visit websites. Thank you again for listening. Please rate and review us where it's applicable. It's a huge help in growing an audience. It's very much appreciated. This has been Sustainable Culture. I once again have been Jet. We'll see you next time.